It's a long one, but.
So it's 50 years from now, and the world is completely thriving and resilient, and everyone knows that that's happened, and they know the big players, they know the billionaires that funded the movements that got the major corporations, some subset of them, to completely redirect themselves and all of humanity, got on its path. But what you didn't know about was the incredible collaboratories. This is the headline: the incredible collaboratory you've never heard of that connected and catalyzed the movements that saved the world.
Whoa!
You didn't know. It's like it's like Xerox PARC and all the stuff they invented, but Apple got the fame, right? So, for example, everyone knows about these amazing currencies. When Google introduced the giggles, gaggles, and goggles, and we knew that transformed and unlocked all of this wealth flow, all these resources. People recognized all this value. What you didn't know, though, was that the TRCC earlier had prototyped Juicy's, Flowbits, and Connectos, and those were the things that Google later picked up on. And that happened out of the collabs that we did, and there was this amazing play
Say
shop.
that again? What did
Juicy's? Juicy's, Flowbits, and Connectos.
Juicy's, Flowbits, Connectos. Got it. Thank you.
I want some of those.
Right.
By the time Google wanted to buy it, it was viral.
Yeah. And another thing you didn't realize, so we know that there were these billionaires that decided to fund the emerging movement, and they funded in particular a number of major initiatives like Transition US and Post Carbon and Valley and a whole bunch of those. What you don't realize is that the reason they did that is that they went on this learning journey that really raised their consciousness, that was organized by the collaboratory. And they went into communities, they went into places like Findhorn and Oakland and parts of Beijing, and there was stuff happening on the ground that they didn't know, and they were exposed to this as witnesses, and out of that, they realized we want to fund this whole ecosystem of initiatives as a group, and we see their collaborative potential. We see that they've actually already figured out how they want to collaborate together, and they made that decision. And then once they got funded, once the movements then were just unavoidable, then a bunch of key corporations said, well, we've got to play that game. We're going to stop. Pepsi decided we are no longer in the business of creating obesity, diabetes, and plastic trash. We are now in service of the movement with everything we have.
And the way we got that journey put together, which was this epic journey of CEOs going around visiting.
Walkabouts.
We branded it as the walkabout. That was the result of several years of development of smaller journeys that TRCC had initiated with smaller, more progressive CEOs and smaller corporations, and taking them around, and we perfected the impeccable experience that these people had, so they had a learning community within themselves and changed their lives when they were in this journey.
Similarly, we all know the story of how Findhorn became a model for communities around the world, and Oakland transformed itself, and Kandahar became the Center for World Peace, and Beijing had the cleanest air in the world. But what we don't know is that all those communities and a dozen others were in conversations together that the TRCC collaboratory was helping to see and connect. So it's like mycelium and mushrooms. The mushrooms get all the attention, and we all know about them, but it's the stuff that was happening underground.
And one of the ways we got the TRCC organizations powerful enough to even do all that was we started the series, we figured out a way to make cross-pollination viral. That's one of our quotes, is remember how we made cross-pollination viral.
How it went viral.
How it went viral.
TRCC.
And the way that happened is that we would take these 5 to 7 day intensives where we would take an organization and all of the other TRCC organizations would focus just on that organization for 5 to 7 days. And we would just juice that organization with every skill and process and tool and support, and we'd raise some money, and we'd raise as much wealth as we could for that one organization. And then we'd move on and do it for another organization. And then after we'd done a whole series of that, then we have these other 5 to 7 day intensives where we'd have dyads and triads of organizations collaborate and figure out how they could embody that they learned from the first iteration.
And of course, everyone knows about the wealth dashboard that went up in Times Square that completely made visible what was important in the world and was compared to the Dow Jones average and the debt clock, and we saw there was no correlation between that and what really mattered. But what you didn't know was that was prototyped in a TRC collaboratory collab as well, in partnership with the New Economy Coalition and a number of of other organizations. The Meta Currency Project figured very prominently too. And so the idea of this dashboard was born there. Everyone knows the one in Times Square.
I think that's pretty well.
And wasn't it Ben Roberts that facilitated a lot of those conversations?
And what does Kevin have to add?
here's
And
another
Marisa.
piece. Here's another piece that was really important too. That underlying all of it, what was so powerful for those billionaires and for these organizations was that there
Yeah, I
was a
got
set
it,
of
thanks.
values. There was heart space. There was an ethos, and a core part of it was this idea that we chose to consciously let go of fear and of our desire to control outcomes and command, and we radically decentralized and empowered massive amounts of leadership and freed up resources and time and all of this. It was a real mind shift in consciousness that, you know, we can see it all now and we take it for granted, but we don't realize how radical it was to take those steps and fully live into them way back in the day.
I don't have anything to add